Hi everybody, welcome to Celestial You. Today we're going to talk about the eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse, and so that's involving the moon. We're going to go into detail about the effects of this eclipse for the next 6 months, what you can expect to be happening. And this eclipse is happening today. It is October 28th. And of course, it is happening on the East Coast because I am looking at the effects of it for the U.S. So I look at it for the birthplace of the U.S. In Philadelphia. And then I also look at it from the world standpoint, what's happening for the lunar eclipse in the world. And then I'll bring it back to what's happening on an inner level. So today, this is happening at 4:24 p.m. on the East Coast. So that's the exact time of the eclipse. That's not as relevant as what the effects are of the eclipse, because the effects of the eclipse start, before and after this, a month before, a month after. And they actually persist for 6 months. And so this eclipse sets the tone for all the other full moons that are going to happen. So this is basically all of the realizations you will have in the next 6 months rest on this eclipse. That's how important this is. So join me as I go over the details. I'm also going to do a screen share and show you my screen, so that you can get a clear idea of what's happening in the U.S. for this eclipse today for the next 6 months. So what is an eclipse in general, and what is a lunar eclipse? We'll start there. And basically an eclipse particularly rides along usually the axis of the north and south node, which are Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is, responsible for your future. Ketu is responsible for your past. So this solar eclipse we just had a couple weeks ago, that was regarding Ketu and your past, because it was in Libra, and that was when the sun and the moon came together in Libra, and it was including the Ketu, or the south node. And so that process is a lot about dealing with our past relationships and things like that. But this this full moon eclipse in Taurus is a totally other matter. And the whole concept of eclipses are that if you are not adhering to your fate, for example, and you're not following that line of fate, it will actually correct your life. It will correct your impressions to get you in line with that fate. And particularly what I have learned over time is that if you are not necessarily in a higher consciousness state, you're not actively pursuing your destiny, then what happens is these eclipses come along and they basically course correct for you. So if you're feeling jerked around, that might mean that there's an opportunity for you to raise your level of consciousness and start to gear your life towards your higher vibrational fate, which is known more as your destiny. So I'm going to kind of go into this, but essentially if you're riding on an autopilot, maybe some of the population is also in denial, and they're just not necessarily tuning in to themselves, their higher selves, to get that guidance to know where they should go. And so as a result of that, they're going to need course correction, and they're getting course corrected to not only the fate in their birth chart, but the fate of humanity as a whole. And so the fate of humanity right now is a pretty dense environment. It's a pretty intensely, on the surface, low vibrational environment. And so it requires a lot of course correction. The fate may not be the highest vibrational. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about not only what this particular lunar eclipse means for you, but what you can do as an individual to start changing the face of your experience here on Earth, even if Earth is not the planet you thought it was, for example, if that's happening to you at all, like it's happening to many of us. Because I want you to be able to take from this a tangible takeaway. Okay, and so that is essentially what an eclipse is for us. It's a course correction. Now, the lunar eclipse in particular has to do with the full moon. So the full moon is mental realizations, things coming to fruition, ideas crystallizing. It's not the start of something, it's the emotional crux of something, the emotional catharsis of something, realization of something. And this particular one, because there's an eclipse, has to do with realigning our future. And, astronomically, the eclipse is just the shadow of the Earth. If the sun is here and the Earth is here, the sun casts a shadow over the Earth. The Earth's shadow is overshadowing the moon over here. And when these three are in a line, that causes the eclipse. And this is happening on typically the nodal axis. Now for this lunar eclipse, it's actually a little bit different because the eclipse itself, the eclipse is happening in Taurus, but the north node is in Aries. So there's a little bit of a difference there. In fact, this eclipse in Taurus is the last eclipse we're going to have in Taurus for a very long time. And we've had a series of eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio axis, right? And so I'll share with you my screen, but the basic trend of this is that this is humanity's time when dealing with Taurus issues around values, around wisdom, around our voice, is to really solidify what our voice is for the last time. And if you are a Taurus sun, you've been through the ringer. I'm a Taurus sun, I've had a lot going on. So this is the very last of that. This is the last cycle of eclipses that are affecting you. And so this is closing out. So the closeout of all these eclipses is the integration phase. So this last 6 months that we're going to see this effect is us integrating the information we've learned over the last few eclipses. I think it's like 3 eclipses that have been along this axis at least. This is the last one. And so this is our last attempt in society to understand what our truth is, to understand what our own values are, and how we have innate wisdom in what we manifest in the world. Because Taurus is how we manifest out into the world, how we manifest our security, our land, our assets, and our intrinsic value as a person. How do we create value in this world? Right. And so I'm going to go into detail when I show you the chart, but the basic trend is if you have planets in Taurus, if you have planets in Scorpio, you're about to feel this. And you have been feeling this. And you're going to feel this for the next 6 months. So I'm going to pull up the chart of the U.S. eclipse, and then off. I'm going to have to try again here, guys. I tried to record this once, and my screen capture got all wonky. So here we go again. So, guys, this is the lunar eclipse chart for the United States. And the things I'm going to point out to you are that the Lunar, or the rising, is Pisces. And so this lunation that's going to last us for the next 6 months, it's going to inform all of our full moons for the next 6 months. All of our cycles, our emotional fruition cycles, are going to be informed by this energy. It is the energy of Jupiter right next to the moon in eclipse. Now the eclipse is 5 degrees and 9 seconds of Taurus. So if you have planets in Taurus or you've got planets in Scorpio, God help you, you've had a lot of eclipses lately. So what does this mean? This is the last attempt, the last set of eclipses, the closing of a cycle, the closing, the integration of all that you have learned about your Taurian values. All you have learned about your intrinsic worth, your ability to voice through your throat chakra, and indeed through the throat chakra of the world, because the Middle East is the throat chakra of the world, and we'll talk about that when we talk about Yamakoti and the world chart. This is about the last attempt that you can stabilize yourself, that you can ground yourself. In what Jupiter is informing this eclipse, this moon, that this is about Pisces. This is about our beliefs, our potential for world peace, about peace in the U.S., because this is the U.S. chart. So the populace of the U.S. is either, and I'm going to give you the low vibe and the high vibe of this lunation, of this eclipse for the next 6 months. The low vibe is the people in the U.S. that believe that their intrinsic value and their stability lies in their religious beliefs. And Saturn is here calling bullshit on that, because Saturn is going to make us mature our long-term goals, our big picture, our philosophy, our sensitivities, and our subconscious belief systems, and our religions. So our spirituality. And so basically, you could be lying to yourself, because Saturn will allow people to low vibe lie to themselves. And one manifestation of this new moon in Taurus is to say, we voice that we're aligned with these religions and that there's good and evil in the world, which is, a very Piscean way to look at the world. But again, that's kind of low vibe, right? And so instead of really looking at that and voicing through the Middle East, which is the throat chakra of the world, what you're going to do instead is you're going to look at this and say, how do we achieve true peace? And Pisces is freedom from the world, freedom from living. It is death of suffering. Death of suffering, right? So if you are looking at this, how can I be more true? Then you're looking at the right way. You're looking at a higher level of consciousness. Why is it higher level? Because Neptune is here. Now, Neptune can either high vibe, allow you to ascend to a better vantage point, higher consciousness, and avoid suffering by letting go of the beliefs that didn't serve you, the right or wrong beliefs, the this people or that people are wrong beliefs. But if you are low vibe or not as conscious, you're going to just see illusion. So you're just going to see, for example, what Pisces is, the government and secret activities of the government. And you're going to see what the government wants you to see because you're going to buy the lies. Right? So it's up to you. I think if you're watching this, you're already not wanting to buy the lies and you're wanting to progress. And that's why you're watching this, right? That's why this has come to you. Now, also, the other aspect of this is because Jupiter is there informing the moon, it is about higher levels of worth, higher levels of truth, and spiritual levels of truth being revealed for you. And this is going to ground you. It's going to cause you to, on one hand, in the U.S. and on an emotional level, you're going to be able to come to agreements within your families, potentially, or at least establishing or the grounding yourself in what gives you wisdom. And even if that doesn't align with your family because Uranus is here causing disruption thereof, Uranus is going to basically shake things up within your support systems still, especially if you're not voicing what your beliefs are. Open up that throat chakra, folks. It is time. And what are you opposed to? What are you trying to get rid of during this next 6 months? Look over here in the opposition. Okay, so this is in Taurus, and the opposite of that is Scorpio. So Scorpio is, low vibe Scorpio is going to be manipulation, power grabs. In the U.S., it's land grabs. It's about the border disputes, with here Mercury being the border. On an inner level, it's going to be you wanting to get rid of toxicity within your own battles. 8th house is battles, unseen battles. So make no mistake, you are clinging to your stability and also your ability to communicate that within your support systems. And if you're doing this well on a high vibe level, you're communicating peace, because that's Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is informing this eclipse, this lunation. Okay, so you're coming to the realization that only way forward is peace, right? To let go of our own bullshit, which is Saturn, to be more mature. So when you go across to that Thanksgiving table in the U.S., where those holidays that you gather, you're letting go of any bullshit. And you're being a little bit more blunt about your voice. But you're doing it for the good of peace. You're not doing it, and in fact, the conflict, which is 8th house, 8th cusp, and this is actually the 9th house here, so conflicts in philosophy, conflicts in religion. This is all available to you for the next 6 months, including over the holidays. So how are you going to play that card? Because it's working against you to have Mars here trying to fight you and create battles if there's any leftover Scorpio toxicity. Now, in the high vibe of Scorpio, that is being brave. So you confront, okay? You can confront because Mars is there, doing it in a friendly way because Mercury is there. but really you're confronting what the bad seeds, the malicious intent, the power grabs, even if that is within your own life and your own family. Okay? And you feel righteous because that's Taurus. Don't be self-righteous. Be righteous for that higher level of peace. Because if you can get there, then as Americans, we can transcend the subterfuge and the wars. Because again, 8th house is war. And we're in a bunch of clandestine wars right now. But what does that mean when the outside is in chaos? The inside we need to let go of the chaos. We need to let go of the bullshit. Saturn is the eliminator. So what are we letting go of? Delusionment. In Pisces. Where are our beliefs not serving us? Right? Let go of those limitations then, you know? Again, this is as much about learning how to communicate as it is reevaluating your philosophies and your religions. Okay? And on a higher level for this U.S., the Mercury is regarding the borders and regarding our allies and how we are engaged in clandestine wars for that reason. Maybe indirect wars, funding of wars. And of course, Mars is fighting. You know, we're fighting covertly. And in order for us to transcend and allow for this more Jupiterian Piscean manifestation of the next 6 months, this is really calling on you to get to that higher level, to get that last chance you have to align yourself with your higher self when you present, when you speak to your support systems. And you might have to eliminate folks or just ignore them when they are not in support of the direction you are manifesting. Because Taurus is how we manifest stability in the world. And I know you really want stability at this point, and it's been rocky. And there's still going to be a lot of changes here because of Uranus still shaking things up. But ultimately, we've had so many eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis that this is the very bottom of the barrel for being able to solidify where your emotional stability meets your financial and external stability and your value to the world. So one last push there. One thing that's interesting about this lunation and this eclipse is that the Aries North Node this is not along, the North Node and the South Node are along the Libra Aries axis during this Taurus Scorpio sort of lunation. And so as we have finished the intrinsic worth versus emotional stability eclipses, we are simultaneously thrust forward into a future of Aries, which is what do I want? And so as you're going through this, what may be occurring to you is, this is what I want based on my values for the next 6 months. This is what I want to be. And it is maybe at odds with all the toxicity that is around me, but this is the pure intention of my value system. And I am going to move forward in my future because the nodes force us to realign to our fate. And our fate right now is to contemplate the difference between our relationships and what we want. And when Mars is here opposing or making us get rid of the last bits of toxicity, emotional toxicity, we're essentially saying, I'm sorry, so-and-so in my family. I'm not going to take any more abuse. I draw the line with Mars, and I'm moving forward to better days where I can manifest the kind of stability in the life that I want. And I've done the work. And so if you are raising your level of consciousness, you are not beholden to fate, as is reflected in the North Node and the South Node. Yes, those aspects of these nodes will affect your direction in life. But when you have a higher level of consciousness that we strive for, why do we strive for that? Because we want freedom of free will. And you can only have free will if you're willing to embrace your destiny and embrace who you are and what you provide to this world and what your values are. And if you're doing that, this is just going to feel like the wind's at your back to get rid of anything that's unseemly, any power struggles, any divergence in political opinions across the Thanksgiving table or whatnot, that's getting you away from what you want to manifest in the physical and the stability you desire. And you got the next 6 months to get this done. So that's what this is all about. And so this is actually the eclipse as we see it from Yamakoti, which is the world point. So this will tell you how the rest of the world is experiencing this lunar eclipse for the next 6 months. And really on the world stage, it's a little bit different because Sagittarius is the rising. And so Sagittarius, as opposed to Pisces, is far more the warrior. So on the world stage, it's still regarding Jupiter, and Jupiter's influence on this lunation is one of spirituality, but this is more of a warrior bent and less of a world peace bent. So this may not surprise you. Also, this is in the 6th house and 6th cusp. So this really describes the conflicts that are happening, delays in creating stability, because Taurus is stability. So there's conflicts too on folks exerting their voice and their truth and their wisdom around the world. And what is opposing this is really 12th house, it's governments. So we're seeing that the governments are not supporting the people of the world. And emotionally, they know that. They're upset. Because 6th house is a house of conflict. And, here Uranus is making them do more rebellious things as a result of this. And now this is a eclipse in Taurus, and the ruler of Taurus is Venus. And Venus here in this chart is riding the 11th cusp. And that speaks to how our networks of people are creating wisdom, and creating truth, or trying to create truth, perhaps by being critical of things because it's Virgo. And that's part of the conflict. It's this desire to say what you want on social media and things like that. So this is the 11th cusp, and that's our social media networks and our groups. And so, and it's also the 10th house. And so, this is really with regard to the perception of leadership and the desire to have more altruism in leadership, right? So all of this conflict is really opposed to governments, 12th house, and it's also opposed to what specifically in governments. I mean, it's opposed to clandestine power grab manipulation, which is Scorpio, right? We're in Scorpio season. The sun is a part of this full moon, right? And it's basically full moon eclipse, and it's basically saying that our consciousness needs to get rid of barriers, which is Mars, and even the ways in which we communicate that are toxic, because Scorpio is toxicity in the lowest vibe. Now, in a higher vibrational expression, I mean, it's very easy. I mean, just let's pause here. It's very easy to see on the news. 12th house is also death. Okay, so there's conflict, there's death, there's borders being violated, there's land grabs, there's all of that. It's clandestine. What you are hearing in the news, it's not necessarily what's happening, because the 12th house is a secret house. And so there are powers that be that do not want you to know the truth, which is Taurus. But the world has already gone through this. We know that censorship is a real thing. We can't talk to our friends, family, etc., right? And so we're fighting. 6th house is, a confrontational house. And what we're fighting for is to be able to tell the truth. And there's so many parties and powers and elites that are not wanting that, because they would rather have power, control, land, wealth, other people's money. They want to grab other people's money. Don't do all of that. So this is kind of the lowest timeline. Now, in addition to this, we still have the node, the future, going into Aries, right? And Aries right now for the 6 months is, from a higher vibrational standpoint, is getting rid of our own subconscious toxicity, right? So Mars is getting rid of obstacles. That's what Mars is. And when it works in the 12th house, it gets rid of our unknown and unseen, like racism and bias, right? So we're working on that, on the world stage even. And so as we move forward with what we want, which is Aries, because that's where the node is, that's where the future is, we are being cognizant through this series of lunations over the next 6 months of what we're fighting for. And it is to have truth triumph, And if there are legalities associated with that, legal fights, that wisdom will prevail, and that virtue will prevail, because Venus is ruling this house from Virgo, which is from the standpoint of altruism. So there's a really nice sort of altruistic energy available if we can approach this from our higher level of consciousness, right? Another thing that we're working on a higher level, on a personal world level, is Saturn in Pisces, which I talked about at length in the US chart. But the way that this works on a world level is that this is the fourth house from this rising sign or lagna. And so what that deals with is getting rid of the bullshit inside our emotional state that could be affecting the world's picture, and letting go of purging of emotions is what we're doing. You know, a lot of those emotions are related to ourselves and our goals and the ways in which we feel down about ourselves. And we have to clear that out, so that we can change our self-expression, because this is the fifth cusp, but this is the fourth house. So the fifth cusp is, how do we rid our self-expression of lies? You know, how do you do that? Well, you go inside. You don't go to the outside where there's war happening. You go internal, and that's what's happening. So you go internal, you go down from the root chakra, which is where all this war is happening, because it's basically about, you know, financial stability. This is why we're having this last effort here, emotional and financial stability for the whole world. You know, this last eclipse in Taurus Scorpio is about that. And so when people don't have their needs met emotionally and financially, they take from others, they steal, they whatever. And this whole energy is root chakra energy. But as we go internal and we get rid of the traumas we have internally as a people of the world, then what we can do is we can travel up the spine to the higher levels, the higher chakras, and we can operate. And if we're gonna fight as people of the world, what are we gonna fight for? I think we should fight for truth, and that's truth and wisdom. We should fight for harmony, which is also Taurus, living harmoniously. And again, sixth house brings delays for that, for this next 6 months, but it is because we are heavily purging, you know, our karmas and our suffering, our inner suffering. And when we can purge our inner suffering, we can actually hold space for a better reality, a better truth, more stability. It is going to be a fight, but it is a fight worth living, worth fighting for. Okay. And so another aspect of this that I wanted to discuss is that Pluto here in the Yamakoti world chart is along the third cusp. So again, this has a lot to do with how we communicate. Can't really communicate peacefully as a world if we're still holding on to, let's say, corruptions of our self-expression. And so this is really prompting us to let go of that. In addition, our self-expression, which is the fifth cusp has to be of the higher consciousness, which is Neptune. Otherwise, it's gonna sound like a cloud of nothing bullshit to people. So remember this as we're working on raising the vibration of the earth, ascending and creating a better reality, a better Taurian reality, which is the reality of the physical world. And, Jupiter holds hope for this. So yeah, we're in conflict as a world, but we have hope that we can let go of the lies, that we can create long-term goals as a world, as an earth, that are mindful of the values of humanity, the oneness of humanity, because Pisces is that oneness of where we all recognize that we are collectively suffering and that we need to release that in order to create what we want. So that is the world perspective. And hopefully that all made sense. If you guys have questions, put it in the comments. Until next time, thank you very much. And I just want to say that it's always a privilege to give these collective chart readings. And I want to be mindful that we're in a difficult time in the evolution of humanity. Many of us suffering consciously and unconsciously through what's going on in the world. And I did have a conversation with many friends who are so distraught by what's happening that they are kind of stepping into perhaps maybe a lower vibrational understanding of what all is happening as our world appears to crumble. And so I'm going to stop the screen share and I'll tell you what I think is actually happening from a global perspective here. I realize that some people are not doing well with the chaos of the world, and that's kind of an understatement, right? But the reason why I myself am able to confront things like government censorship or large-scale governmental corruption is because I have a faith and an understanding in the evolution of humanity. So I don't think, for example, that this is what's happening and this is what we're left with and that's it. No. I think that we are coming out of the Kali Yuga, which is a time where humanity has been stuck in war energy, manifesting the physical. It's a 3D reality, right? But actually we're on an ascension pattern and we are coming out of this Kali Yuga. We are meant to ascend. And when I hear good people say things like, well, including my own father actually, well, we've always been in war in humanity and this is no different. Actually, that is a sort of resignation. I've seen a lot of people with Pisces placements say this lately. It's like, oh, it's no big deal that we're on the cusp of World War III. That is just not my philosophy. And I want to share my philosophy with you because I think it's important to have an inspirational alternative narrative, especially right now. And so my idea about what's actually happening in the world is not that we are just repeating cycles of abuse and terrorism and violence with no avail, with no progress. Because in order for us to be doing that, humanity would have to be moving in a linear fashion, right? We would have to be going from A to B in a linear fashion. But the way in which this matrix that we live in is constructed, the way in which our world is constructed is not linear. It's actually constructed along a helix, right? So even though it may feel like we are linear and we're going from, a non-evolutionary standpoint, right? Stagnation as a people, even though it seems like we're getting more sophisticated, but we're really not going anywhere. That's not what is happening from my perspective. And that's why I feel optimistic. So what I believe is happening right now on Earth is I believe we are going through a purge where the powers that be, the governments that had been like sitting on UFOs or like UAPs or like otherworldly technology are having to admit some of this to us for the first time in like 75 years. They would have never done this before, right? There also, there's a lot of incompetence in our governments, the way that we have allowed ourselves to be governed in our education system that is now being exposed. And so as we go through this evolution, it's more about us learning to go within. And as the infrastructure crumbles, which it is doing, I mean, hello, Pluto is still in Capricorn, eroding our governments. Do not forget that is still happening, because as we see this happen, the veil is thinning on their acts of corruption. And it's important for us to understand that, because it's not like the governments were always corrupt. Yes, they were always corrupt, but now we're in a time and a phase in history where some of us are choosing to go inwards and take the journey inwards to ascend. And when we turn the journey inwards to ascend, we're able to raise the vibration of the collective. And when we make that decision, the earth that we see, the potential we see, is that which is cleansed of this corruption. That's the direction we're going. We're not going to continue to be pushed around in a meaningless human experience. That is not it. That is not how I see this. I see this through the lens of hope, through the lens of peace. Because even though I can confront the actions of the government and say, hey, that's wrong, and I can see that, and I can see it as plain as day, it's not going to take me down. And the reason it's not going to take me down is because I can see it now. That our technology has given us the ability to educate people in a way that we couldn't do before. So in a lot of ways, the wool has been lifted. And especially if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. So what do we have to do, right? Well, we have to find the pieces of ourselves that need healing, and we need to heal it, because as we create this new world, we want it to be free of this old systems and the methods of control that we've been beholden to for so long. I've seen a couple categories of people I think of folks like my father and others who are just saying, this is the way humanity was, it's always going to be this way, and basically it sucks, right? Nihilistic. Okay, we're going towards, perpetual war, right? And then we have another piece of people who are in denial of what's happening. They see it, but they're so scared because they're scared of their own shadow, actually, right? So if you're scared, then that means you need to go into your shadow, right? If you're nihilistic and you don't think anything's worth it and it's all like bad anyway, then you've resigned yourself to live in perpetual suffering. And then there's the third category of people. And these are the people that are waking up, fully waking up, And these people are seeing what's going wrong, but they know it's a game. Not in the sense that these aren't real lives, they are real lives, but it's a game in the sense that in order for us to live our highest possible timeline, each of us has the free will to choose a better life within our own measure of control, okay? We don't have to bend to the collective's karma. We don't have to bend to the fate of the collective, which might be to be in wars for a lot longer, right? And we don't have to do that. We can start on the path of manifestation and creation. And we do that when we have this opening right now with these eclipses. We're very solid about our values, Taurus, and our emotional needs, which is Scorpio. When we have solidified these things, we can go through life with a new level of stability. We don't need to operate from our root chakra where everything's about fear and war, okay? We can start to go up the chain here. And I would invite you to come into this third category if you have not already. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably are. But I want to give you guys that hope because as an astrologer, yes, I believe in fate. And I can see in the chart that there's fate. But more recently, as I was looking at this to kind of tease which is fate and which is free will, I've come to the conclusion, and I'm probably going to do a couple of videos about this, that free will is only available to those who ascend. And ascension is a choice. You can choose, and this is the choice. I'll give you the choice, okay? Because I'm going through this process myself. And I'll give you the choice, and the choice is this. You can continue to believe that humanity is destined for suffering. You can continue to believe that you're a victim of this reality, or you can fight the system, and I mean you can spiritually fight the system by having the audacity to believe that we have freedom. We have spiritual freedom. We're not here to reincarnate and resuffer, okay? We are not here to adhere to a religion that is going to tell us what to do because they want to talk to us about our sins constantly, and they want to keep us trapped in a cycle of feeling bad about ourselves. How do you end? You start to think about being on your own team. This is how I think of it. I mean, maybe this resonates, maybe it doesn't. Think about being on your own team. Part of these eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis are really refining, what are you about, right? How do I get my value, right? How do I derive and provide value? How do I manifest in this world? So what do you want to manifest? Because there are higher timelines available for us. Humans are a spark of the divine. And as a spark of the divine, we have access to free will when we get out of our own way. Are you getting out of your own way? Do you want to get out of your own way? Because if you're like so many that I've met, and they can't get out of their own way, and they're really buying this humans are bad narrative, or these humans are bad, but these are righteous, and the XYZ religion tells me that. That's not what's going on here. I mean, it could be if you just want to sit there and fight. But if you're here and you're listening to this channel, then the odds are that you're looking for a third option. Maybe if we put our effort and stop thinking about what the external world is doing and what people think of us, we can actually speak our truths, be our truths, live according to our true values. Because as we do that, we start to create higher timelines for ourselves. And what happens? Fate is only a correction that is done when you're on the lowest rung of the ladder, right? Do we want to be on the lowest rung? Because maybe the lowest rung for the earth is perpetual war, right? Do we want to be on that? Or do we want to say, I want what I want out of this life. I deserve more, because Taurus is what you deserve. What do you deserve in this lifetime? Do you deserve to live on an earth that's in perpetual war? Because if you don't, you have to forgive every piece of yourself that is contributing to that collective narrative. Every piece of yourself that's ever been racist, divisive, or just savage, and heal that and tell yourself that you are safe. And then travel from the root chakra upwards. Because that is the path to freedom. That is the path to enlightenment. And it's available. It's hard to find right now because it's so dense here on Earth. But I'm making this video in part to tell you that this is the path that I'm trying to be on as well. I want more options for myself and for humanity. I don't want to just go based off of fate. Fate alone isn't good enough for me. That's not the existence I'm looking for here. Yeah, we can look at the astrology and see what's happening in the world, see what's happening in the US. But when I talk about the high vibe manifestation of that and the low vibe manifestation of that, that's your choice. You get to choose which one you want to do. It's a choose your own adventure here. And if you still think that the outcomes of your life, that you're still beholden onto fate, you're still in victim mode and victim mentality. And this is something that I've been prey to. I mean, as a human, we all get into lower level vibrations, especially when we're having chaos in the world. But right now, over the next 6 months, you don't have to do that. And when people are like, oh, it's like a horrible world and things like that, you can say, no, it's not. It's not a horrible world. Because I know you, and I know so-and-so, and I know another person, and I know people around me, and I know that they're inherently good. And I know that we can create a better reality. And I know that I'm trying within myself to create a better reality for myself, to create happiness for myself, from the inside out. And when I do that, I emanate that joy and happiness to others. And when I do that, there is no such thing as perpetual war. And by the way, we don't really have perpetual war going on here. We are in a war energy this year, but it's the energy of boundaries. So just set your boundaries and stop the war within your own life, within your own heart, right? And as we get to the end of this year, humanity is supposed to ascend beyond the vibration of war. We are moving on to pride. But unfortunately, pride has a lot to do with ego, but at least it's not direct war. So as we ascend, that's the pattern, you know. We have sunk low, yes, but we've sunk low so that we can see our own shadow, so that we can do our shadow work, so we can release our generational trauma, so that we can surpass where we were before. Humanity is not going into negative, right? This is not what this is. Okay, so use the momentum of this lunation to drive you from a Jupiterian perspective. Jupiter is, the god of gods within astrology, right? It's joy. It's pure spirituality. Jupiter is running through Taurus for a reason. It's to stabilize us. So working at that inner core stability is how we get out of this. Stay with it. Work on those emotions. Be who you are, right? Express yourself through your truth, through your throat as you are, And as you do that, you will ascend. And when you start to ascend, because of the way this earth is functioning, you're going to see synchronicities, and you're going to see manifestations, and the law of attraction starts to work for you. But guess what? It doesn't work for you if you just rest on the heels of fate. Because fate alone is not your destiny. Destiny is what you make it. And I'm going to have to film another video about this because it's like super in depth. But I wanted to give you this last piece to help push you and to help set that higher bar for you. And I hope this is helpful. So thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, I love you. Bye.